Hey guys, this is going to be the second video in the programming video series where we're going to basically cover how to get started with programming. So in the previous video we covered the control system, how things interact with each other in terms of the control hub, your driver hub, and also your laptop. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely watch that because it's going to be important for anything we cover in this video. And so by the end of this video you should have a very decent understanding of how to create a program, how to run a program, and also how to use that control system. Now, I will be honest, it's going to take some time before we can reach that step, and so that will be toward the end of the video where you're comfortable, because there's a lot of setup we need to do from the start of this video and kind of in the medium term as well. So this video will cover the setup, and at the end we'll do some programming, but you need to kind of go through everything step by step to reach that end goal. So definitely follow the tutorial as it goes along. Also, I'm going to be using this as a screen recorder slash, screen, because I'm going to be throwing my video here and making it a little smaller. It's a bit of a dodgy solution, but I can't be bothered installing OBS, but it is what it is. So we'll use this. I can put it in the corner here, I think. All right, that's good enough. So first things first, have your laptop open and you should see a similar screen to what I see over here. So that's pretty much that. Next thing we're going to cover is what programming language you're going to have to choose. So in this video series, I'm going to cover both blocks and Java. So there's playlists for both of those. There is also an in-between option called onBot Java, which I'm not going to kind of cover because it's the least popular option. But pretty much if you're a rookie and you're just starting out, blocks is going to be your best option just to start off with. If you're comfortable with line-by-line programming, or you've done line-by-line programming before, whether that's in FLL with Python, or anything in the past, even if it's just like web development or something simple, kind of doing line-by-line programming in FTC will give you more options as you get more competitive. So there are things that you can't do in blocks that you can do in Java. And so either way, I'd still recommend start off with blocks if you're starting out and you're not familiar with FTC programming. Everything you do in blocks will then transfer over to Java. So it's important to kind of get that start anyways. But that's pretty much my explanation of that. And so you can choose the playlist that suits you. The next thing I'm going to explain is pretty much what we'll cover in this video. So we're going to explain how to set up the control system. So we explained what the control system was in the last video. But in this video, we're going to explain how to set it up, how to update it, making sure that you're familiar and comfortable with the control system, and then creating a program and running a program. All right, so first things first, setting up the control system. As a programmer, it's actually your responsibility to ensure that the control system is 1, up to date, and 2, functioning, and if anything goes wrong with it, you need to be able to debug it. And so in the FTC game, we pretty much have 2 tools that will help you. The first is the control hub, which is this thing over here. And then the second is a driver hub, which is this thing over here, which is currently on charge, but hopefully it'll be ready by the time we get to it. So both of these are Rev Robotics hardware options, and you don't have a choice. You usually have to use these. So in order to make sure things are good, we're just going to open up your Google, and then type in Rev hardware client download. So if you just move to their installation page, you can download the Rev hardware client. So this is their documentation. We're not really going to use this, but it is genuinely really helpful if you are stuck with something. So once you click this kind of external link, you'll see things are downloading in the top right hand corner. We'll let that download. There's also other documentation on the control hub, expansion hub, driver hub. These are your, the control system stuff we explained in the previous video. But hopefully this video will step through any of the issues that you might have. And if there's things that I don't cover in this video, definitely refer to these pages because there's a lot that can happen. So I'm just going to open up that exe file. Say yes. All right, I'm also just going to make sure that my recording's still good, which it is. That's perfect. Now, next thing we need to cover is how to set this up. All right, so you need to ensure that you have the right amount of storage. So 330 megabytes, that's basically nothing, 0.3 of a gig. And you'll see your available space here. So as long as this number is smaller than this number, this is megabytes as well. So this is technically 600,000. So don't worry about that. Should be all good. If you don't have 330 megabytes, you're probably in trouble anyways. So we'll let that install. It's very fast, this particular download. It's going to run a few different processes in the background because this is coded initially with C++, but it needs to be delivered onto Microsoft. So don't worry about this, let it run its course. I'll let the whole thing load here and talk over it. Because in the meantime, we're going to explain what we'll do once our hardware client is open. So the hardware client is exactly what it sounds like. It's an app that lets you control the hardware. So when I say hardware, I mean the Rev driver hub, the Rev control hub, which is this, the driver hub, which we explained before, it's on charge, and the expansion hub. So each of these hardware devices have a control system or like a motherboard inside that ensure that when you power it on and you connect it with different types of motors or servos, it's going to function properly. Because of that, it's basically like a phone. It needs to be constantly updated. They will update things, perhaps on a 3 to 6 month, potentially a 12-month basis, and that's the way it's going to be. You need to constantly update it. It's one of the requirements before you, go to your competition that your control hub is up to date, your driver hub is up to date, and if it's not, you'll get warnings on the actual devices. So it's very important that you run these updates and check things are working. Now this is quite an old control hub. It's from 5 years ago now. So there's a good chance things aren't updated, which I'm hoping because then I can explain how to update them. It's fairly simple. The driver hub, however, that we're using is up to date. We should be okay with that, but we'll see. Now, the hardware client is finished. So finish it. It's gonna run it because I've got the run checked. Now it's opening. And again, I'll just pull up my camera. There we go. All right, no hardware detected. So first things first, this is the hardware client. It's pretty simple. You need to be connected to the internet, so make sure you connect it and then check for updates. When you click check for updates, it's obviously gonna check if anything needs updating. We don't have anything connected, however. In order to connect your devices, you simply need a USB-C, which is this connection over here in the control hub, the USB-C connection, to USB-A, which will go into your device. You can also use C to C if your device supports that. So let's plug in the control hub and see what we get. Okay, so I've got my USB-C to USB-A wire. I'm going to take the USB-C end, which is this one over here, plug it into the control hub, just like that. So you can see that's how it's connected there. I'm then going to take my USB-A end, which is the bigger USB square, and plug that into the laptop. So, although it's plugged in, nothing has happened because the driver hub, the control hub, isn't on. So the next step we're going to do is basically plug in a battery into the control hub. So I've got my battery over here. It's not fully charged, but it's good enough. Couple of things about the battery. You'll see it has a connector at the end. This is called an XT30 connector. It's very popular in electronics, any kind of applications like drones or robotics. And if you look at the control hub, it has a little symbol that says battery, which is the white text that is probably hard to read. But basically, you take your XT30 connector, and then you see there's this little output over here, which you plug into. So I'm just going to do that right now. Just like that. So once you plug in this connection, the control hub will basically start to flash. Now, as I mentioned, this control hub that I'm using is quite old, and so the connection is quite loose. But hopefully if you're using a new control hub, you won't have that issue. But that's pretty much a problem with the control hubs is the pins just need to be moved a little bit, but that's a non-issue for the sake of this video. Now, as soon as we've plugged in our battery, we can now see that the control hub is actually turned on and we can see it. So I'm going to click it. After I've clicked it, we then get this screen here. So this screen is the actual update screen. There are a lot of things that need to be updated, as you can see. There's the OS, which is what runs the control hub. There's the Robot Controller app. That is, you can think about these two as connected. So we basically need to update both of them. So we'll update that one and we'll update that one. Yeah, there is a warning here that says if you update these, then there are inbuilt programs that you may have created in Java that will be removed. Now, this obviously is a concern unless you have a backup of that program. So if you haven't done any programming, you can just ignore this warning because it doesn't relate to you. Again, the warnings come up over again here. I'm going to update these because I have all my code backed up. So that's not an issue. Let the update run. Again, let everything run normally and seamlessly. I'm going to skip until the point where the updates are finished. So it's now going through the upload process. The first process was download for the OS. Now it's uploading, so that's going to take some time again. The robot control app is finished though. That was a quicker one, but we'll let this now update. Okay, so everything's finished, which is good. That took a little bit of time, but now it's done. So this was the control hub. Remember, the control hub is the brain of the robot, and now that's all up to date. That's perfect. We also now need to check that the driver hub is also up to date. So I'm going to disconnect the control hub. So you can see as soon as I disconnect it, it's been taken out. Oops, just threw the control hub there. It's all right. Take off the control hub and the battery. We'll set that to the side because we don't need it. And now we'll grab our driver hub. So I'm going to grab my driver hub, which is, again, the square here. And I'm going to connect the same kind of, I've just connected the control hub, and I'm just going to connect the driver hub using the same connection. So USB-C into the driver hub, that's that there, that's all done. And you can see the driver hub comes up, and now same question mark, same process. We're just going to click the driver hub, and you can see that there are two apps. There's the driver operating system, which is up to date, so that's good. That's one we don't have to do. And now we have the driver station app, which we do have to update. So the driver station app is basically the app on the driver station that will allow us to connect to the control hub and run programs. This is fairly fast, so we'll let that run through and it's done. Pretty quick. So that's very good. We'll check for updates again. And now we press update. Now the update process will potentially take a bit of time. All right, never mind, that was pretty quick. And that's done. So our driver hub is updated, our control hub is updated. We can now take out the driver hub from the laptop, take it out. And so I'll pull up the camera again. Perfect, so we now have our driver hub all set, ready to go. We'll put that to the side. And we also have our control hub all set, ready to go. So this is a really critical first step you need to do, downloading the hardware client, updating everything you use, because you don't want to create programs and then have to update things later on. As you saw, updates can cause issues with the programs you've created. It can wipe things off your control hub. You may have things reset. So doing it at the start of the season, making sure that even in your preseason, you've got things up to date and ready to go is important. So I've got a clean slate, and now we can move on to programming. So in this video, we're going to be covering how to program in blocks. So when you're programming in blocks, you have two options for actually connecting to the control hub. As we explained in the first video, the laptop that we use, so this screen you see in front of you, needs to be directly connected to your control hub, which is this over here. So first things first, I'm going to turn on the control hub again. So I'm going to re-put the battery in, let the lights flash green. So let's do that. I'll plug it in. This is probably not going to be on camera because we've done this before. Make sure it's the right way. There we go. So we've got our control hub plugged in. That's all good to go. It's flashing blue, but as soon as it turns green, we can then connect. As we explained in the first video, there's two ways to connect to your control hub. You can connect using a wire, which is the USB-C wire connected directly to your laptop. So if you have a USB port, you can do that. The second way, which is my preferred way, is to connect via Wi-Fi. So connecting via Wi-Fi is pretty simple. What we can do is go to our Wi-Fi settings, which might be off because I'm screen recording, but I'm just going to do it on my second screen, which you can't see. All right, here we go. So we've got the Wi-Fi settings over here. I'm going to click the Wi-Fi settings, and then I'm connected right now to my home Wi-Fi, but I'm going to disconnect off that and connect to FTC-18306. this is the Wi-Fi output that the control hub sends. So if I connect to this, it's going to ask for a password. Because I've connected to it before, that password's already known. If you don't know how to get to the password, I'll show you now. But as soon as I connect to it, you can see I've now got my control hub connected to my hardware client within, all done through Wi-Fi, which is pretty handy. So all of the programming we do in blocks can actually be done in the hardware client. There is another way to do it, which is to connect its IP address. But for the sake of this video, I'm pretty much just going to use the hardware client because it works pretty well. So first things first, you can see I've got my passphrase here and the FTC Wi-Fi here. So if you're unsure about what the passphrase is, you can just connect by USB and then see this passphrase here. And then, look at that. Hopefully this will change because I'm publicly sharing the passphrase of our Wi-Fi, but make sure you keep this protected. So change that after to make sure it's safe. So again, just to explain that, I was in the Update tab. Now we're going to go to the Program and Manage tab. So in the Program and Manage tab, you can choose whether you want to program in blocks or on Java. So I'm going to program in blocks. So what I'm going to do is click blocks, and you'll see a screen of a bunch of different programs. Now, as I said, this Java Hub is really old. It's from 2020, which was the first ever server program. Perhaps there were things that we've deleted since then, but this is basically the programming list of all of the programs. I can open any of this, and these will currently open the program. Now, you're pretty much going to see an empty screen here, or if you're using a used control hub from the previous season, you'll see that. But I'm going to create a new program. So programs are called op modes, operating modes. So op modes are just another word for program. It's basically where, open the screen. Op modes are basically where you run a program on your driver hub. So I'm going to create a new op mode, and it's going to ask for a name. You can run off samples, so if you want to use the pre-made samples, you can, but pretty much everything we do in this tutorial series is going to use basic op modes, which is an empty slate, and then we're going to connect from there. And then after that, we are going to type in our name, and let's call this tutorial. Oh, let's change that to lowercase because we're not screaming. There we go. Open. All right, perfect. Now, as soon as you open your programming language, you're going to see blocks. You're also going to see this side panel over here. So a couple of things that I like doing is immediately closing the on.java code because we're not doing Java. So we'll unclick Show Java. I also like closing the Updates tab because we don't really need to see this. So we'll hide that. And now we have more of a clean screen for programming. So this error here is to do with the fact that we have samples. So the sample contains bare minimum code for regular op modes. We're basically going to ignore this for now because I'll show you how to use this. So just click the question mark and that'll close that. So now, before we get into the coding, let's explain what we have here. So at the top, you can see we have our normal tab. So don't click anything else because if you're programming in blocks, you only need to keep this as blocks. So if you click off this, your program may not save. So don't worry about that. It's important to save your program every single time. As soon as you save your program, as long as your driver hub is on and connected to the same Wi-Fi network, you will have that saved to the driver hub. So if I click blocks again, you can see I have my op mode tutorial saved because I pressed save before I clicked it. It's now going to show me where I was. You're not really going to need to export to Java or download things because we're going to keep things stored. This is kind of like on the control hub itself. So this is not connected to your laptop. If you disconnect the control hub on Wi-Fi or the USB, you can no longer program. That's a little bit of an annoyance, but it's just the way it is with FTC. Things are stored onto the control hub, nothing else. If I turn off my control hub right now, which is just next to me, I will lose access to the programming software. So you need to have your control hub on, and you need to be ready to program because that's just the way it is with FTC blocks. Java is a little bit different, but this is blocks. So that's done. We can now explain whether you want to go teleop or autonomous. So I'm going to be creating autonomous code for the sake of this video. I'll change it to teleop. This will just change how things are actually shown up on your driver hub. It's not actually important for the code. So you don't really need to worry about this until you're actually creating autonomous code. Keeping it as teleop for the sake of the tutorial is probably going to be better. So I'll leave it like that. Now, here we have our blocks. So each one of these have different blocks that we can pull out and use. So these little icons here, so gamepad, server, sensors, these are all of the devices that we might connect to. So if you want to program the controller, which is this controller over here, we're going to use the gamepad. If you want to program sensors or motors, you're going to use the sensors or actuators. Actuator is just another word for motors. And if you click this, you can see you have servos, and you also have motors in here. We'll get to the motor part. It'll be a separate video, but we'll program motors when we see them. We also have utilities, which is important for more complex stuff, which we'll see if we get to in the video series. Now you have logic, which is your if-else blocks. You have loops, which is repeats and while loops and for loops. You have math, which is very important if you need to do any kind of multiplication, addition, things like that. Simple math, but still important. Text, lists, variables, which we might need if we have special functions, which is see these variables and functions work together. And then miscellaneous, which I'm guessing were little things that they couldn't fit in any other category. Now, for the sake of this video, we're probably only going to be using one or two of these, but that's just the way it is. As you kind of grow and expand your programming knowledge, you will end up using more of these blocks, but you only really need to know a few tabs just to get started, which is basically what we're going to be doing in this video series. Now, let's explain how to actually program and what the programming operation is. So I know it's been a long video, but just for we're reaching near where we're actually going to start programming. So as we explained, it's a long build up, and you probably would have spent maybe an hour, maybe less than an hour setting everything up. But now we can actually do some programming. So in FTC, everything works off an op mode, which is this purple block over here. So everything you do needs to be in this purple block to run. Then there are two states. There's the initialization state, which is this blue block over here. And so if I put stuff in the initialization state, like let's just say I put sleep, it will sleep for 1 second in the initialization state. Now, that state refers to when you click it on the driver hub. This initialization state will make more sense when we get to the driver hub. So I'm just going to press Control Z and Control Z, so that's gone. So for now, you probably won't have any initialization. We'll see if we get up to it later on. But that's just when you click init, which is a button on the driver hub, this code will run, but not underneath the if do. So it's going to put all your initialization code here. You're going to do that. And then when you press play on your program, that's when this code here will run. All right, so that's the initialization state. Most importantly, all the code we run is going to be in this if do. So once we click start on the driver hub, which is a process you'll see later on, it's going to skip past this call wait for start and then move into this when op mode is active. So op mode being active is what happens when you press play on the program. And so everything you do will be inside this while loop over here. I know this is a lot of words and a lot of blocks, but pretty much when you're starting out, you can imagine that this part is gone. So I'll just leave it there. And this is where all of your code is going to run. So while you have your program on, it's going to repeat whatever you put in here. So if you say like, I don't know, servo run to a certain position, it's just going to do that once, right? Because as soon as you run to position, it's going to run. Or if you say, I don't know, say hello 3 times, it'll say hello 3 times and then repeat it. If you just say hello and then stop saying hello, it'll keep doing say hello, stop saying hello, say hello, stop saying hello. So in order to kind of enforce this, I'm going to press Control Z, Control Z. I'm going to actually run some code, or write some code and then run it. One more thing in blocks that's really annoying, but it is the way it is if you when you have this do while loop, this repeat do, if you have a block here, let's say this put loop blocks here, this is a comment. I can change this to whatever I want. So let's write starting code. So it's going to, this is just for me. I can delete this, it's not going to matter. But if I want to take this out, watch what happens. It drags the one underneath it as well. This is a very annoying reality of blocks programming. I'm sure there's ways to get around this, but it is what it is. So if you want to take out code, and I just want to take out the starting code comment, I have to take this out, put this back in, press this, and press delete. So that's one thing just to be aware of. All right, we right now have something called telemetry. So it's running a telemetry update call here. Telemetry is actually pretty important. So actually in this video, all the programming we're going to be doing is with telemetry. Telemetry is when you have a message you want to send to the driver hub. Sending messages is really important because you need to be able to know where in the program you're doing things. And if you have a driver who's controlling the robot with the gamepads and they want to know where they are in the program, sending messages to them through the program is going to be done through telemetry. So it's basically just another word for messages or sending messages. I guess it's metric because you usually send numbers and statistics or data, and then tele because you're sending them like a telephone. So sending messages, sending numbers. Now, if you want to go to your telemetry blocks, what we're going to have to do is go to utilities, and then in telemetry, we have all these blocks over here, which is nice. It's good. We have a lot to work with. So we just want to kind of send a message. So if you want to send a message and a value, you can use this key number thing. If you want to send, decimals or things up to precision, you can do that. But we're just literally going to be sending actual, just plain messages. And so this block here is going to be useful enough for us. So I said that the starting code is going to be in initialization. And so we're going to test that. So we're going to add this call telemetry add data. We're going to add a key. So our key is going to be like, it's the thing before the message that you'll see before the semicolon, but we're just going to add like testing. And then in the text, we're going to run initialize. Actually, I'm just going to write init complete. So init is just a short way of saying initialization. So this big word, I'm just going to write that. We also have to update our telemetry. So what I'm going to do is go to telemetry and then update and add that there. So then that way, when we run this, it needs to tell it, okay, now send the message. That's all we're going to do for now. So I'm going to save this code here. As soon as I press this save code, if I pull up my camera, that code is then sent straight to the driver hub. So we have our driver hub here. I'm not going to pick it up because it's a little bit dicey with the connection, but it's going to send to the driver hub. I'll pull up a second screen actually, because that will help. So here we have our driver hub. It's on, it's working. I've got the power connected to it. And right underneath it, I'm going to set up the control hub. So I'll turn the control hub on. It might take a little while. There we go. Don't restart it. Don't worry about Shrek. That's a backstory. But anyways, we have our hardware client app, which we can see everything's up to date. No need to worry about that. The app that we're going to open is the FTC app, which is this app over here. So once I click that, you'll see this screen over here. Now, importantly, once this app is running, you'll see a few key things. So I'll try and zoom in onto the app actually, because we'll get a better view of it. We don't need the driver hub anymore. All right, that's perfect. So we have our battery, which is going to be 12.5 to 13.5 volts, which is safe. If it gets below 12, you should probably change it out or charge the battery. We have the driver station battery, which is this over here. You can see it's 53%. That's actually a little low for this driver hub because the charge runs out ridiculously fast because it's a few years old. So I'm going to connect it to the battery now, which I'll just do over here. I've got a whole setup that we can't really see, but it's a little annoying. Importantly, this driver hub is a little fiddly to use. You can see the screen might turn off and on, but that's just the way it is. All right, there we go. So my battery is now charging. You can see that's the driver station. DS is the battery for the actual device. So this device here, 52, 52, perfect. We have the battery for the robot, which is 12.58. That's this battery over here. If I show you that, so that's the battery. Come back here. Now we have the rest of the code. So we have our lighting, we have our screen here, which shows you all of your autonomous code on this side, and then all of your non-autonomous code, your other code on this side. So we'll let the lighting focus because it's a little hard to see. But you can see that the tutorial, which is the program we just made together, is there. So if I press init, you can see it has the testing init complete message. If I press play, then that message isn't gone away because it's in the code, but we haven't removed the message. We haven't added another message. So that's going to stay there. If I press stop, it's gone. So again, we'll do that again. We'll press init. So first things first, we click the right program. So we've got tutorial program selected. Press init. Then we have the message. Play it. Something else will happen. We have nothing in the play in the while, but we'll get back to that later. And then we'll stop. Now, a couple of things. On the left-hand side is all your autonomous program. So when we selected the non-autonomous teleop, it shows you which side. So this will be all your teleop code over here, which is with the remote control with the gamepad, and this will be all of the autonomous code. Last thing is you have a bit of a timer if you want to turn it on and off. That just helps when you're running autonomous code because the autonomous period in the game is 30 seconds, but we'll turn that off. All right, let's go back to the screen. Okay, so you can see we ran our program and that worked relatively well. We had this testing and init complete, which is exactly what we saw. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to click this block here. I'm going to press Control C and then Control V, and it's come up again. If that doesn't work for you, don't worry. What we can do is just delete it, and then let's go back to our tutorial utilities. So that's this function here, telemetry, and then we used this kind of block here, this key text. Now inside our play, we're going to add another function, another telemetry message, and this time let's say testing inside play loop. So I'm going to call this repeat while loop the play loop, and so we're just calling it testing inside play loop. I'm going to hit save op mode. As soon as I've saved the op mode, I'm going to go back to tutorial, press init, so we have our first message, press play, and now testing has changed to inside play loop. If I turn it off, everything's off. So again, init, that's just going to run initialization. I clear the program, it's going to run that message there. So that's pretty much it. Like, you've just created your first program. You've seen how the control hub and the driver hub interact with each other. You know the understanding, the differences between initialization, which is what happens before you press play, but you have pressed init, and then inside the green while loop, you have your testing, which is this loop over here. Because this is a long video, I won't actually get into more complex programming, so we're not going to run servos or motors. That's going to be saved for future videos. What I am going to do, however, is explain how to use the gamepads. So the gamepads is this Logitech one here. You might have a PS4 or you might have an Xbox One, but I just have the Logitech one because I'm using pretty old material for these tutorials. So the gamepads need to be programmed. If you're using gamepads, then you're creating teleop code. If you're not using gamepads, then you're creating autonomous code. It doesn't really matter whether you select autonomous or teleop, but when you go to competition, you need to make sure that these are in the right sections. But for this video, we're going to keep things in teleop. Now, to program with the gamepads, you can see we have a gamepad option here. So this gamepad option, you can see it's a bit of a different block. So let's say I pull out this. This is gamepad 1A, and just to give you an explanation of that, gamepad 1A is the bottom green one here. It says A, but you probably can't see that. So this is a different type of block. You can see it's got like this puzzle piece section to it, which means you can't put it in underneath anything here. It needs to actually go with its adjoining puzzle piece, which is usually an if block or a while block. And so you can find that in logic. So you can see we have the if, which has the puzzle piece section here. So let's pull out the if and let's connect this and this. Now let's read this. So if gamepad 1A is pressed, that's what this means. So if gamepad 1A is pressed, then do something. Now, because we're not programming motors and servos, we only have telemetry. Let's actually do the telemetry, right? And instead of adding key, I'm going to write here A, which is the button. Actually, I'll write button A. And then inside the text, I'm going to write is being pressed. Okay, and I'm going to throw this all back in to here. Perfect. So let's read this. Again, we have our initialization, which is going to be, instead of testing, let's just get rid of the key. For the key, let's just write, let's see, init, and then inside this, we're just going to write complete. So it's going to go init, and then the 2 dots, and then complete. So that's done. We're not really caring about initialization. It's just because it's there. We can equally get rid of this. But let's leave it there for now. When we press play, inside, it's just going to loop this action. So it's going to check if I've pressed gamepad A, then I'm going to send this message. You might be thinking, what happens if gamepad A isn't pressed? Well, in this code, we don't have anything in else. So what I'm going to do is change this logic block to if, do, and then else. So what this does is it's a bit different. So I'm going to still keep the insides the same. So if gamepad A is pressed, we're going to send this message here. Button A is being pressed. If gamepad A isn't pressed, Control C, Control V to copy paste it, throw it in here. Let's say no button is being pressed. And then we also have to update telemetry, so don't forget to do that. Cool. So let's see if this works. Press save. Now connecting the actual gamepad is fairly simple. I'll have to move a few things around, but that's not an issue. You can see we have some ports down here. So we have USB ports, and our gamepad is USB connected. So we're just gonna throw that in there. Once the gamepad is connected, nothing will actually happen. So what I'm gonna do is lift it up a little bit just to get more view. And I'm gonna put the gamepad in view. So you can see there's no user 1 or user 2. If I click start, which is this button here, and then A, which is this button here, and then look at the user 1, so I'm going to try and focus this properly. Okay, and press, oh, it's gone. You can see that the symbol there has got onto user 1. Equally, I'm going to press start and then B, and watch what happens. It changes. So you have 2 users that can control the robot at the same time. That seems a little crazy, but it works if you program it correctly. And if you go back to the code, we can see here that I said gamepad 1. Gamepad 1 refers to user 1. So I need to make sure that I click start and then A. And then user 1 is now connected. Again, I'm going to have my gamepad in view. So if I just do it like that, I'm going to press init. And we have the init complete. It's different to last time. If I press A, nothing happens because we're still in initialization. We haven't pressed play. Let's press play. No button is being pressed. Let's press A. A is being pressed. No button's being pressed. A is being pressed. So you can kind of see the idea. We've now created a program that controls when we press a button, things that happen on this screen. That's useful because we can see messages. But eventually we're going to basically say, like, if A is being pressed, then turn a motor, then turn a servo, then do different things. So as an extension, because we've covered the if-else block, there's one more thing I'm going to do, and it's going to be really useful because this function is quite important. I'm going to get the if-else, and then I'm going to throw in an else-if. So You can see we had a few ifs. So we had the if do else, which is what we're using right now. And then we have something called an if else if do. So let's leave it at this. So if we do something, we're going to show that in the first block. Else if means that if something else happens, right? So let's program this. I'm going to take my block out and I'm going to change it. So if gamepad 1 is pressed, so that's all the same, then do these things. So again, that's all the same, all good, no stress. Else, let's say else is nothing being pressed. We'll leave it like that. So we can now delete this block because we're not using it. Functionally, this is the same, nothing has changed, but we have this else if here. This else if is for other cases, like what if B is pressed? What if X is pressed? What if Y is pressed? So on the gamepad, we have those 4 letters, which is the 4 kind of, if I pull up the camera, a lot of cameras. So we have these 4 here, these 4 here. So we have A and B. A is the green, B is that one, and then we have X and Y. So we have 4 buttons, and so let's just program all of them. So what we're going to do is take this code here. Again, if you can't find it, let's just go into Gamepad, and then you can see there's B, and then if I click the drop down, there's X and Y. So X and Y are here, but let's just take that. Remember, it's Gamepad 1, not Gamepad 2. So else if that, and then we're going to go to Telemetry. So utilities, Telemetry. You can also copy paste, but for the sake of learning and getting used to pulling out blocks and using blocks, I'm just going to keep it as this. Let's add data. There we go. So telemetry, add data, and then I'm going to copy paste this because I'm lazy. Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V. And don't forget to change this to B. All right, that's perfect. So we've got if A is pressed, then do this. If B is pressed, then do this. Else, which means if nothing is pressed, do this. We can add more. So let's like add another else. Oh, that didn't work. Add another else, and let's add another else if. Because we have 4. So now what we can do is, I'm just going to do this fast. Press this, right? Control C, Control V, put that in there. Control V, put that in there. Change this to the other letters, which was X and Y. Again, you can slow down this video if I'm going too fast, but Control C for the message, Control V for the message. Change this to X, perfect, is being pressed. And then change this. You can zoom in and out using these buttons here. Change, I can turn off this now. Change this to Y here. All right, always good to double check your code if you're going a little fast. Let's review it. So if gamepad A is pressed, let's send this message, button A is being pressed. If gamepad B, or else if I should say, then for B, similarly for X and Y, and if nothing is being pressed, then make sure to send nothing. Now, I've forgotten to add the updates because it's very important. Every time you add a new telemetry, you need to update the telemetry. Otherwise, it's just going to read the same old message as before. So if I didn't add the updates, things might not work. Let's review my code one more time. That all looks pretty decent. Yep. And I have this whole block here, which I can put inside the do. So while the program is running, we can do all of this. So I know this is a bit intimidating, but we broke this down one by one, and we've done like a lot in this first video. And so once we play this video, we'll be done. So let's save the program. Sorry, once we play the program, we'll be done. Again, let's head back to, we have to turn off the other code. So we'll turn that off. And you can see now that we have our program still here. Again, nothing has been added because we haven't uploaded any other program to this driver hub. So we've got tutorial, which you can't really see, but I've clicked tutorial, which is the first program here. And then I'm going to press init. And so we have our init complete message. I'm going to get my controller. I'm going to change the view a little bit. Let's see if I can get both of these. All right, so we have our 4 buttons, A, B, X, and Y. And so if I press play, you can see no buttons being pressed. A is being pressed, B is being pressed, Y is being pressed, and X is showing up like this. So we have a bit of a problem with our X controller. It could be that this controller itself is quite old, but that's a common issue. We could also have something in the code that doesn't make this happen. So let's go back to the code and see. So you can see in our code, we actually forgot to update the telemetry. And so it just kept adding X's. Like we said, if you don't update, that's going to happen. So Control C, Control V, add that there. So one quick change, let's press save here. And then stop the program. And now once we stopped and we've pressed saved, it'll happen automatically that things will now change. So let's press X again, and now it's operating exactly as expected. So you can see I was a little bit quick to jump to the actual controller as being the problem, when in fact the coding was the problem. 99% of the time, the coding is going to be the problem, and not like a servo or a motor or the control hub. There's something wrong with what we're doing that will cause an issue. But it's just human nature to assume there might be other problems, which it could be. So yeah, that's this program. So you can see we've created a pretty advanced program in just our first video. And the code itself is not that difficult once you break it down. So that was this video. I know it was a longer one and a lot happened in this video, which is the nature of programming in FTC. It took us a long time to set things up, but then once we had things set up, once our control hub is up to date, driver hub is up to date, things are connected, Wi-Fi is working, we can move on to coding. So although this was a very long video, probably over an hour or so, it's important that from now on, things will become a lot more seamless. This could have really been 2 videos, but I just kept it in the 1 video because understanding telemetry is part of the control system, whereas programming motors and servos are a step beyond this. But once you understand this video, programming motors and programming servos is just as easy. It's going to be using Gamepads, it's going to be turning motors, using those blocks. And that's the nature of programming in FTC. So hopefully that was helpful and you were able to get through all of it. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.